What's so interesting about skills is it's been around forever. It is the foundational data point that connects people, learning, and work. When we think about skills as a data component and that mechanism that it connects people, learning, and work together, it really touches everything within our tech stack as well as many of our workflows. Once people realize that skills touches everything, it seems too big of a problem to solve for. So they don't know where to start and they don't know what's actually going to move the needle in the short term. That's a good thing that it touches everything, but it causes a paralysis of what does this mean? Where does it? Because from a sort of theoretical standpoint, people understand that skills will help improve because they've been using old HR models and frameworks to manage the business, which has been through job architecture and job titles. Organizations don't have a concept of a skills data point in their systems, so they don't have a good starting spot. Usually we overcome those problems by saying, let's start small with a pilot and be able to apply this so that we can start assigning skills to the right area of your business. And how in depth do we need to go there? When we start some of these early projects, they want to get really precise. Like we need to have the exact right skills. We need to have proficiencies assigned to those skills. We need to have it be this perfect thing. There's massive risk of inaction because how you manage your business going forward, you're guessing versus having the precision needed to feel confident in the strategy that you prioritize. We see this every day through companies having mass layoffs. My theory is if companies actually knew what skills their people had and what work needs to get done, you would more strategically align the right people to the right work and be able to manage that more effectively. But as most decisions get made, it's through a finance lens and they're looking at a spreadsheet of job titles and departments and saying, yep, we can cut this whole thing without even knowing that some of their best engineers are walking out the door. So if we can get this more precise, it's not only going to help save the company's money, it's also going to create a better experience for employees in terms of retention, in terms of aligning to the demand that is there, and then helping people upskill effectively. There's two approaches that companies and organizations can take to develop a skill taxonomy. One where most people try first, they do what's called a top-down taxonomy. So they look at the most popular functions that are in a particular company and say, okay, we have an IT group. What are the top skills for IT that we want to prioritize? And they'll set 10 to 20 skills under an IT bucket, define that and say, okay, for everybody that sits in IT, these are the top skills that you should go after. It's helpful, but it's not as helpful as the alternative approach, what's called a bottom-up taxonomy. And that's where we look at the individual job profiles and job architecture within a company, even at the lowest level. We want to assign skills to those particular job profiles at each level and dial in the skills that are associated with each one of those jobs. It's a little bit of a harder process because you have thousands of things that you're doing versus a handful of functional buckets that you're trying to place. But as it gets applied into the systems within an organization, it becomes much more effective tool because now we've just created a data foundation layer at a precise and granular level attached to each job profile. It's the precursor for helping employees measure themselves against what's expected for that job. And once we get the employee skills, now we have that skill gap that every company is searching for. When we typically start with companies on this work, we apply a scaled human approach to this. We customize a flow for every single customer based on their unique circumstances, understanding what's going on in the business, what are the business drivers, what's your skill philosophy, what are we trying to unlock in terms of business outcomes. Then we get into advising around best practices of what does a good skill makeup look like. How do we start to build out that skill to role taxonomy that is going to drive the data components and then flow into our core systems that we're using. And then we always want to focus on the validation of that. So we engage SMEs in different surveys and interviews to make sure that we're dialing in the exact skills that make the most sense for your business. And now that we have this information about what skills we need to run our business, how do we start to apply that to critical roles, whether it's key recruiting initiatives, key learning initiatives, or mobility? We were working with one of the largest retailers in the world, and they really wanted to develop a system that would encourage their frontline associates to have a better career pathway solution and understand if I start off at an entry-level job, where can I go next? How do I retain this talent? Because one of their biggest issues was turnover and running out of labor pool shortages everywhere in all the different markets that they operate. They really need to dial in retention strategies. And one of those ways was saying, if we can get people in and we can preview where they can go through unique career pathways, but also serve up learning content in the flow of that decision-making, that's how we can upskill to get our associates ready for those next step jobs. And so they ended up building out the expected skills for each of those jobs so that they could see the natural overlaps. It completely revamped how they posted for their jobs and prioritizing certain skills. It revamped their internal mobility options that they showed, and they actually ended up creating a custom app to actually point their associates to this so they could see what those future jobs could be for them, and then showed the skills that they need to develop and the associated learning that would help get them ready for that next step job. So for that retail example that I just shared, the cost savings was around $13,000 per employee. So that equated into millions of dollars of savings. Just a few direct impacts of where a skill strategy can help.